Hey everyone. The past week, I've been playing around with creating a component that extends spatial audio volumes, rooms, and portals. The TLDR is that this component allows any SAV to set states and RTPCs on entry and exit, alongside being able to gauge how far inside of a room your player is. However, if it was as simple as that, we wouldn't have all of these examples. This component works for regular volumes, actor-oriented bounding boxes, neighbouring volumes, volumes inside of volumes, and volumes inside of volumes inside of volumes, and however far you want to take it. The main benefit is being able to inform the sound engine whether or not the player is inside or outside without relying on additional volumes, as well as knowing what kind of room they are in. You could use this to drive music or other sounds or systems, but I really just created this to get a handle on how viable and difficult it would be to set up. Let's start with the component itself. As stated before, this is attached to an SAV, and in the first example, I have gone and filled in a few fields. Firstly, we tell the component about the exit portals. This is mainly used for determining how far inside the player is. This works across rooms, which we'll show in the third example. Secondly, we have the entry and exit states. In this example, I've just said that on entry, set the state to indoors and a room type of small, and of course on exit, set to outside and a room type of none. As for the RTPCs, I've just set this volume test to 0 on entry and 1 on exit. This isn't hooked up to anything at the moment, it's just for demonstration. And lastly, we have the RTPC tracking the indoor weight. Hopping into the scene and starting with the most simple example, you'll notice that when we enter the room, the top left debug tells us that the room has successfully set the entry states and RTPCs, alongside tracking whether or not the player is inside, as well as how much inside they are. The indoor weight debug, including the line to the closest exit, interpolates to blue the further we are indoors, and to green as we approach the exit. At the moment, this is just based off of distance and doesn't consider AK geometry like diffraction does when it curves around obstructions. As you may have guessed, walking outside the room sets the exit states and RTPCs alongside resetting the indoor weight. And the cool thing about this is that it supports non-standard entries and exits, by which I mean not via an exit portal. So if your player manages to clip out of the volume or into the volume, then the states, RTPCs, and weights will update accordingly. Moving on to our second example, this is just briefly showing how the component respects the collision of the actor-oriented bounding boxes, so we won't be considered inside the volume in this corner, where we otherwise would be on the axis-aligned or unrotated volume from before. We can walk along the 45-degree perimeter, and there is no unexpected entry or exit behavior. The third example is where things become a little more interesting. Here we have two volumes with the extended components connected via a transitional portal as defined in the mapping by the false set, alongside 3 shared exits. The main thing to take note of here is the conflicting states. When we exit volume 1 into volume 2, the exit states for volume 1 shouldn't trigger because it needs to respect the fact that volume 2 also sets states from that same state group on entry. For example, we don't want to set the global indoor-outdoor state to outside when exiting volume 1 into volume 2, since the player is still inside. This will be easier to demonstrate as I walk around here. You'll notice the orange debug tells us that volume 1 has tried to set its exit states, but it conflicts with its neighbour. The same goes for volume 2 into volume 1, which has been unsuccessful in setting the indoor-outdoor group to outside and the room type to none, but it has been successful in setting the exit RTPC as signified by the green debug. This is because volume 2 contains the RTPC in its property set, but room 1 doesn't, so there's no conflict here. Another cool feature is that even though we do technically end overlap with both components while inside the transitional portal region, the component is smart enough to not trigger the exit properties until we exit the portal. The last thing I want to show here is that even though we are inside volume 2, the component considers exits connected to volume 1 when it comes to indoor weights, since the exit portal is part of the same building. Our fourth example demonstrates how the component handles parent-child spatial audio volume relationships. I'm going to hop in straight away to show you that how when we enter the innermost volume, we successfully exit the parent and trigger its exit properties, even though we are still technically overlapping the parent volume, so there are no problems in that regard. When we exit the child volume, the component is able to identify the fact that we have re-entered the parent, and therefore retriggers the entry properties, even though this whole time we were overlapping the parent as far as collision was concerned. As you may have guessed, this is a query triggered from the transitional portal exit, but it's not just limited to that, and exiting the child volume forcefully through the wall will also trigger a parent re-entry, so we don't need to worry about things breaking in that regard either. And of course, we can forcefully exit the parent as well in order to get to the outside. Things get a little crazy on example 5 with volumes within volumes within volumes. I don't know when you'd want this, but the idea that my component would break under these circumstances just didn't sit right, so it supports as many nested volumes as you'd like. This was mainly a showcase to show what was possible with spatial audio volumes in Unreal Engine. I likely won't be releasing this component just yet because there are a lot of things I want to change in terms of performance and some other interactions, but if you want to give something like this a shot yourself, then I hope that this video was insightful in terms of the things that you're going to need to consider, such as edge cases, priority, and conflicts.